Alright, on YouTube, I'm in a new position because there are thunderstorms rolling in as we speak. I choose not to be near the windows when that's happening, especially with electronics, just a precaution. It's time to talk about Venezuela again, because the opposition has now validated the signatures on their proposal to oust Nicolas Maduro. That is, what happened is that when the economy went south, the rioting and protesting began. When people started running out of food and basic medical supplies, the opposition, which had won the prior election in a landslide, started up a referendum. It's constitutional. The Constitution was agreed upon by Maduro's own party itself, by the way. I think that's fairly clear at this point, even though the socialists will pretend it's not. They started a referendum to gather signatures to try to advance a plan to remove Maduro from power by force. Maduro then, of course, did what any tin horn dictator would do, regardless of what party they're a member of, by the way. Said, oh, well, you're going to have to check all those signatures because who knows if they're even valid. It could be people that don't exist. Maybe they're all fake. Turns out, of course, as we all knew, they're real signatures. They did get more than enough signatures to oust Maduro, and now they can proceed with gathering additional signatures. Maduro's next step, of course, will be, oh, well, it's not really validated, so you're wasting your time. See, he's going to try everything he can do to cling on to power. Now, what will end up happening, if they do end up holding the final referendum, get enough signatures to kick him out, he's not actually going to leave peacefully, even if like 100% of the population of Venezuela signed a petition saying, get out. He still wouldn't. He'd just pay the military more and hope that they back him. This is how a dictatorship operates. This is how an autocracy functions. This is how the EU is increasingly looking, sort of like a tin horn, like Banana Republic sort of dictatorship. It's really rather sad. Even democratic countries can fall into this kind of nonsense. Venezuela is supposed to be a representative republic. It's not supposed to be an autocratic dictatorship, but that's increasingly what it's looking like, partially. Of course, people didn't realize when Hugo Chavez was giving them welfare handouts that he was also pissing away money that could be stored for Venezuela's future to expand other aspects of the economy other than oil, so that this sort of problem wouldn't have arisen. Even under a redistributionist, centrally planned system, if competent people are put into place to actually carry forth the central planning, things tend to go just as stably as they would in a free market, at least short term. Unfortunately, what was done, of course, is they didn't use any of that money really for investment into projects that would bring additional wealth from other aspects of the economy. They weren't used to make oil extraction more efficient, which would have helped at least a little in the current situation. They were simply used to give people free shit. This is sort of Bernie Sanders socialism, and it's why it doesn't work. That's one reason why, bad as Clinton may be, it's actually good that Bernie Sanders lost. Because what you end up having is a socialist program at first is put into place. It's very limited. It's like one or two programs, and they too are limited in scope. They grow over time. People like them, especially the working class. They vote in more such proposals with additional socialists. Over time, these programs inevitably get more and more convoluted, expensive, and regulated, and eventually the system collapses in on itself. It's not even the fault of the socialization of one or two programs. It's the fault of the natural processes of a socialized system to grow inordinately over time. Usually outstrips the economic growth as a total, almost always. And more of your economy ends up getting eaten away by welfare that doesn't actually expand production, so that when bad times hit, you get fucked. And of course, Venezuela now for a couple of months has seen protests and riots, shortening food supplies. There are long lines at all of their bread counter sort of places, and there's not much to buy anyway. Those that do acquire food apparently now require armed guards to get home without getting accosted by the hungry hordes. This is what happened in the USSR too, to a degree, in certain areas towards the end of Soviet domination. Of course, you have similar problems. Even when you have production marching along, things are sort of like in between third and first world. and at least people are marginally literate, and there's some industry going on. Even in that situation where you've got the electricity and the goods and so forth, even if they're substandard, even then you can have separatism. It's even worse in a situation where you've got a country that is essentially deep third world that never spent any of its money because it doesn't have a private market and never really did. None of that money ever went to developing infrastructure or expanding industry or making things more efficient. This is why countries like that are never on the forefront of learning. Nordic model socialism, so-called, where certain things are redistributed and the rest is free market, that's a far cry from the Venezuelan-style system or the Bernie Sanders-style system that he has in mind. It's regulatory to the extreme as opposed to the Nordic model, which redistributes some wealth from some aspects of an economy. The rest is still free market and helps the country cope. It doesn't hurt that the Nordic countries, of course, were fully industrialized anyway. Venezuela's not. Venezuelan industry is essentially oil. That's a monoculture. That's all it is. Russia has a similar problem. They're an oil-driven economy as well. So there are enough petitions to proceed to gather more. I think it's 20 million they need or something. They'll get it too. They'll get the 20 million signatures or whatever number it is they need to reach. It's just a matter of Maduro's not going to listen to them. And if Maduro were to be removed from power by the military or whatever, the state of Venezuela actually funds and arms insurgent groups within the country to destabilize it if socialism is ever outed. It's the only country that does that. Even in places like the DPRK, this doesn't happen. So unfortunately, it is bad times ahead for the Venezuelan people regardless. Now, remember, after the Brexit, the oil price dropped from, I think, 51 a barrel back down to 45. So that's going to hurt their economy even more. It had risen up. Now it went back down again, and probably will stay there for some months. How much longer can the Venezuelan economy weather this? They need $100 a barrel oil just to break even economically. They're nowhere near that. They were breathing a sigh of relief that they hit 50, maybe could get to 60 a barrel. And that's even historically fairly low for modern times, at least, for sort of the post-90s era. So I don't see it going well, really, for the state of Venezuela. They should just put a hole through Maduro's head and be done with it. Not that it would matter. The other socialists would just take up arms too. They should ban socialism altogether, usher in a free market, wait until they have enough development to actually implement a few socialized programs, and have a more or less free economy like any other sort of industrialized Western state. In a country with that much oil, there's no reason for them to be so poor. There's no reason for the Venezuelan people not to be not only first world. They should be more first world than some of these Arab microstates that are nothing but a giant tourist resort skyscraper and some oil rigs. There are countries like that. They could easily do it. It would have been so easy during the Chavez years and the early Maduro years. It would have been so easy for the state of Venezuela to become at least as dominant as Chile was when all the other countries were riling in socialism, and Chile embraced a more or less free market, became quite wealthy, and had the industry and had the high quality of living. They could have at least gotten to that level. If not become basically a second United States, they would have been a massive muscle of production. They could have easily done. They could have funded their wildest dreams. They could have built the most extravagant shit ever, and it wouldn't have even fucking mattered. The amount of money they were making on that oil, they just pissed it away, and it was Maduro's fault largely that this happened. But don't think Chavez gets off the hook for this. Chavez started the tradition. Yeah, things began advancing because of some of those welfare programs. But they didn't plan long term. They were planning year to year. This is the problem in a centrally planned economy. You say, oh, well, we're going to give people more welfare. They'll be able to buy this and that and the other thing. Then the electricity's turned off. They can't use the toaster oven. They can't use the microwave. The iPad's useless. The fact that you have a literate population no longer matters. You have no industry. You've erased your private market. You're deep in debt. Your currency is worthless. You can't even re-import it anymore. They were re-importing their currency by the plane load to pump it back into the system. They can't even afford to re-import it. They can't even afford to print it now. It's so hyperinflated and getting worse by the day that people literally, they would rather trade banana leaves or toilet paper than their own currency. Their own currency is a fuel source now because it's actually cheaper than firewood. That's about all. Peace out.